All right, we continue on with part 3
So
of our
last
episode
last
2.
week, the most watched segment was where we talked about the upcoming Super Bowl, and I realized that I had things that I wanted to say about the Super Bowl that happened, a week ago Sunday. But the funny thing is, I've heard almost nothing about the game itself. I have no idea who won. I have no idea whether it was close or a blowout or whatever.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Eagles.
Everything. Oh, Eagles.
It was
Okay.
Super
Okay.
Bowl.
Well,
And
but-
the only reason I know this is because I turned it on at the last
Oh,
minute.
okay, but my point being is that I've heard a whole bunch about the game, but most of it was about the halftime show and about Trump getting booed and about Taylor Swift supposedly getting booed and about all this stuff surrounding the game. The game itself was almost like an afterthought as far as what I've heard. But the biggest thing, of course, about Trump getting booed is apparently our major networks replaced the boos with cheers, and all of the other foreign networks kept the boos, and so now we have this culture, conflict of truth almost.
Right, and you'll have some TikTok videos or whatever, reels from whatever social
Showing,
media source having both. Like you'll hear, and I guess it probably might have depended on where you were sitting.
Right.
And I've heard some where the boos are really apparent. Others it's not so much. You can't really tell what's happening. There's just a lot of noise. The same with Taylor Swift. And I just find it kind of odd that, like, if you're going to boo for Trump, why would you boo Taylor Swift? Like, it's either going one way or the other.
Yeah, but I also thought it was interesting that apparently this was the first time that a sitting president has even gone to the Super Bowl, and I thought that was interesting. Not so much that Trump would go, but why anybody else in the past didn't go. I don't know. I don't really have a theory about that. I just thought it was interesting.
I think the most interesting thing is that you said it was one of the most watched piece from our thing last week, and our whole segment was about how nobody gave a shit.
Right. Well, and most of the people who watched our segment about it also said that they didn't watch, but they liked cheering on the fact that nobody was watching.
Well, and the thing is though is that I read somewhere, I don't know, that it was the most watched in NFL history. So,
but then the question is,
how and why,
if we're saying that it was the most watched, is it most watched because people were watching the halftime show, or because people were actually watching the whole
game? Or they just watching from abroad? Like, I don't know.
Right, I don't know.
Our whole thing was like, our whole slant was, if you didn't see this segment, was about how either it was people were less interested or didn't care as much. We're talking about it because of all of distractions, or we just don't hang around people who care about that shit.
Yeah, that too.
But it was odd though, because we still have to live in society, and years prior, especially before the last 4 or 5 very strange years since the pandemic. You always heard about it somewhere, sometime, and there was always
lot
a
more
buzz.
than like.
And it just seemed like there was nothing, and we didn't even know until the day of, like, oh my God, it's the Super Bowl.
Right.
So that was our whole.
Did you want to say something about Kendrick Lamar's? I don't even know how to describe it.
Halftime performance?
Well, halftime performance, yeah, but it was it was a message,
political statement.
Political statement. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. So it more than just, and and the funny thing, he's multi 20 something, I believe, is what I heard somewhere. He just won a couple last year.
He's one of those artists
Pulitzer
that
Prize
I couldn't
winning.
name you a song, but I recognize the name. He's won a bunch of awards. He's well known. Yeah.
Right. I haven't listened to his music personally. I know a couple of his songs. The one that was most talked about during the halftime show, I recognize.
Oh, okay.
Not Like Us, and that's a very political song, and it's extremely not like us.
Yeah.
Exactly what it means, and the whole display was, kind of an insult on American society and culture in general, and not an insult.
Kind of a big middle finger.
Yeah,
kinda,
exactly. If you want to call it.
But it was like cloaked and not cloaked at the same time. Like, some people didn't get it, but if you did, then it was right in your face, kind of thing.
Well, that was the beauty of it, is that all these people who and I saw this Newsmax reel where there was this guy, alleged anchor, not opinion, like, these are not, anybody who has any sensibility whatsoever knows that Fox News, Newsmax, OAN are not news stations. They're just, opinion mouthpieces from far right fascist lunatics. So, the guy was saying like nobody knows who this guy is, and like I mentioned, he's got all these accolades and awards and millions of fans and followers, and on Spotify he's like one of the top guys. You know,
Right,
it's
almost
insanity.
narcissistic again. The whole idea
It's the
that
narcissism.
just because you don't know who he is,
He doesn't exist.
You assume that he doesn't exist. It's like
The narcissism,
Right.
like the previous segment, if you didn't see it, is all about narcissism and cultural narcissism, and this is the extreme narcissism that these people have, and the funny thing is the song "Not Like Us," like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't get, they don't get it. The very people who didn't understand it and were like, "Oh, I needed, subtitles to say, what is this? This is the worst Super Bowl halftime show ever." The extreme narcissism of that, the extreme insanity, and the fact that the whole thing was a political statement about people like you, and knowing you would be saying this crap is the funny part, is the real funny part of the whole thing. You know, so
yeah, that pretty much summarizes.
yeah, kind of Lamar's
but,
performance.
Um,
And you know, he had that beef. I don't know what's going on. I don't pay attention too much. Something about who's the other rapper?
Drake.
Drake.
Yeah.
Somehow involved in something with that, but I stay out of that. But as far as the political statement, I think it was brilliant. Like I said, I'm not too interested in this. The song was kind of catchy, that one. I liked it. I'll go back to NWA and White Devars and Flavor. I'm having a mental block.
Oh, I know. That's what, I was going to mention the same guys.
You know, that
Fight
was
the Power that they have.
yeah.
Public Enemy.
Public Enemy
Yeah.
and NWA were I had those. I remember I was in the Army at the time. I had the cassettes, and some of the guys that were there, like, "Oh my God, let me borrow that." Some of the,
And body counts and stuff.
what's that?
With Ice-T. Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, it was a little solo dig, but yeah, I remember I was listening to that stuff early on. I was really into that early rap. But to me, that's a musical discussion we can get into. I mean, maybe for the next minute or two. But when I look at like rock and roll and like blues, right?
Public Enemy actually toured with them. Who am I thinking of? Not Alice in Chains. Earlier than that.
Who? Public Enemy?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Aerosmith?
No.
Because they did Walk That Way.
the-
No, that was just
the,
on DMC. But
I'm kicking
anyways,
myself.
maybe you'll think about
I'll-
it. So anyways, what I was saying was, if you look at early rock and roll, which was influenced heavily by the blues, and then you got the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who and the Pink Floyd, which were excellent British bands, by the way. But it was all derivative, of the blues. And I think Led Zeppelin probably was the last.
Sisters of Mercy.
Sisters
They
of
actually
Mercy.
toured with Sisters of Mercy.
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
So anyways, you had all the blues greats from the American blues greats, That that progressed into like the British blues rock invasion, and that kind of spawned rock and roll. So then you had some bands that went into the 70s, like the Pink Floyd and the Led Zeppelin and some of the other good bands that kind of started in the 70s. By the 80s, it had really washed out, and I think maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan might have been the last vestige of rock and of the real rock and roll. Because in my opinion. But then you got then you got Whitesnake and what was
The hair
the
bands,
Rat
yeah.
and all these are just garbage, absolute nonsense in my opinion. I hated all that stuff. I could not
I
understand
like
it.
some of it, but
Look, that's me. That's me.
Right.
I couldn't do it when I was a kid. I thought it was ridiculous.
Motley Crue.
Motley Crue. That was by that point I was getting into like, Gary Newman and early, New Order.
What would become
before
the
New Order.
industrial, yeah.
Well, before New Wave, and then
Yeah, New Wave,
some
right.
industrial New Wave got a little political, especially in the '80s with Reagan. There was some punk rock going on, but I stayed more on that alternative bent than I did with any kind of crazy rock and roll stuff. I had completely, kind of moved away from that, even as a young person. So, and I think the same thing holds true for me, at least with rap music. Like early on was some of the best stuff. I mean, even the Beastie Boys, even though it's a bunch of white dudes, they after their first album, which
Speaking of white dudes, I mean, Eminem has actually got his recent stuff is really political.
Is it?
Yeah.
I could never get into him. But anyways, but I'm not. I don't know why. I just couldn't. But my point being, early on, I thought it was fantastic, and then it got washed out into some really bad crap. But there's some, Kendrick Lamar. It seems like some, and throughout that period of time across the board, there's always been some iterations that are good. But it had its heyday, and it kind of just petered out. And I don't think rock and roll got any better after Stevie Ray Vaughan. He might have been like the last of it. And then it was just reiterations or some example or something very derivative of something that already was there. So that at that point, it just never got any better. Same with rap. It just seems to have petered out at some point.
like Greta Van Fleet, it's good stuff, but it's utterly impossible to listen to it and not think of Led Zeppelin.
And I couldn't just imagine being an artist and not progressing beyond one style or genre. Most bands that I like, even though you can still tell who they are, have transformed over the years quite a bit, or had different albums with different feels and different approaches. Anyways, I don't know. I don't want to get into too deep of a discussion right now on music. We can do that another time, but this probably wraps up this little episode. So, yeah, we'll see if there's another one.